Hi, my name is MachineRite, and this is Understanding Fortnite. So going back to my video, talking about the different types of memory and how to transfer your creative skills over into BR. There's a few methods that I talked about to unload your working memory. The first one was unloading your mechanics and making most of your mechanics implicit or subconsciously performed. And the other thing I mentioned was fundamentals. And I mentioned that fundamentals were all of your in-game advantages that you can set up, like peaks, and all of your trading knowledge, things like that. Knowing a bunch of fundamental advantages that you can always use in a fight to gain an advantage is super useful, and you don't really have to think about fights at a certain point. But when you do think about fights, you have much more space in your working memory to do that. In this video, I'm going to be showing you how you can practice all of these fundamental advantages, and that's using this new map that I made. It's kind of like the peak map. I've added some new stuff. I've taken some stuff away that I didn't think was useful. I've basically stripped the map down to the only things that I think are essential. So first we got to understand the main advantage of a peak, and that is the action versus reaction advantage. So when you peek, you've created your own input that you can time. You know exactly when to take the shot, you can see them through the wall, and you can time that shot. The person on the other side has to react to you jumping and then shoot as soon as you appear. And this action versus reaction advantage is pretty much the core of all trades in Fortnite. If you want to win trades, you have to use this advantage as much as possible. This is an advantage that you can set up yourself. You have control over this advantage. You may have heard me call this a focused advantage in the past, and that's exactly what it is. You can go and focus on setting up these advantages. Something I call a given advantage is when your opponent actually makes a mistake. But yeah, that action versus reaction advantage is the most important thing in winning fights in Fortnite and winning trades in Fortnite. Because once you win one trade, if you deal more damage than your opponent, it's very easy for you to push with that health advantage, get in their box, and win a fight more reliably. I see a lot of people that say taking 50-50s is bad and you should just never do it ever. When you're in BR and you're fighting somebody, you can't fight them forever. The longer you fight them, the more delayed your rotation's going to be and the more delayed you're going to be getting into zone. The second level of having good peaks, and that's not only forcing your opponent to react to when you're going to peak or when your player model is actually going to be exposed, but also forcing them to react to the type of peak that you're doing. When you do this peak on someone, automatically they're going to hold crosshair placement right here where you're going to appear and try and pre-fire that, or just try and react to your shot, and often they can get a trade back, which isn't good. And the only reason they can trade that back is because you've given them time to react and put their crosshair here and hold crosshair placement. So the second level of peeking is keeping your peek concealed until you're about to use it. So if you open your peek and jump right away, they have to react to the type of peek you're doing and put their crosshair there, and then they have to right away react to you being exposed. And this makes them much less likely to actually hit you with a pre-fire or trading you back in this situation. And the other thing in this map that I'm going to show is a bunch more even ground peaks that you can do so that you can get away from only using this, because people are getting really good at holding crosshair placement on this, pre-firing this peak, making it less and less reliable as an advantage. This is the main room of the map. In here you can pick up auto reload so that you don't have to reload your gun all the time. And then we're going to start with the low ground peaks. So first one, you want to build this. This is a very simple one. If you're ever on low ground and someone's on a ramp above you, but basically you just edit this, and this can give you a right peak, and then you just reset. And you want to make sure that you're resetting this as fast as possible, just to make it less likely for them to trade you back. Now resetting it does help, but what you don't want to do is you don't want to expose yourself all the way and then shoot and then rely on the reset to cover you. The best thing you can do is to peek and then peek back and reset at the same time. You're combining these two advantages to hide your character again, and hopefully this will give you the best chance at avoiding shots when you do this. The next peek you can do is this one. It's a pretty simple jump peek. You just edit this and edit the ramp like this. I see some people do this peek where you edit this square and you edit this, and then you have like the ramp like bumping you down. There's a couple reasons I don't like this, because the area where you have to jump is very specific, which I guess you could figure out eventually, but like say if you jump too far back, like you're not going to get the angle that you want. You have to be like right here, like in this very perfect spot. If you're slightly off, like you're not going to get the angle. Like you have to be in this very perfect spot. If you're too far forward, you get bumped back like this. And this happens a lot when you try and combine this with some sort of build that has momentum, because the perfect spot is like right here, and if you try and jump from here while you have momentum, you fly forward and get knocked back by this. Whereas with this peak, even if you have momentum, you can still get the angle because your head isn't getting knocked back. You can jump much earlier. Next thing I want to mention is like the window you actually have to see your target and prepare for your target. If you look at the top of my screen right now, the distance from my character's head to the top of the screen, that's almost like your peak like buffer zone. That's like the amount of time you have to react to where your target is. If you're doing like a blind peek, you have that amount of time to react to your target and shoot. So when you edit this and your camera is being pushed back into your character, you lose that whole buffer period, and this becomes very random. You have to basically guess where they're going to be based on sound, and when you're doing this fast, like, it just becomes a lot at once. It gives you less time to react to where your target is. I just don't think this peak is very good. I think this peak, although like your head doesn't get bumped down and you expose a little bit more of yourself, you have that reaction and that buffer time from the top of your screen always to see your target first. So the next station is this one, and with this peak we're doing the pretty basic low ground peak like this, and then I like to reset this every time. One thing I want to mention is you want to be right up against the wall and you want to be jumping backwards, and that's going to give you the most protection, because when you're right up against the wall, your opponent has to come very far forward before he starts to see down there. He has to come this far forward, and this is another example of making use of that buffer area on your screen. It's that top bit of your screen that's giving you that second to react to where your target is and shoot. Next peek we can look at is the same one I did before. I like to chain them on different sides like this. The next thing you can do is, using the same peak, is you can start shooting at different targets. I would not recommend shooting at the high targets on the left side, just because you have that left side disadvantage. Your gun's getting slightly blocked by this cone. Shooting at the higher targets is much better over here. So yeah, I like to do this peak, alternate targets like this. Alright, at the next station, I like to do this peak, but then I like to alternate this peak where I don't edit anything. I just jump back and I take a shot from here. So I like to do this pattern, and then I like to take my just normal shot from the back without editing. Alright, so we're back at the main room. We're going to go to high ground peaks. So I'm going to do the same edit that I normally do on this map, except this time I'm going to have two different ways to actually use it as a peak. The first way is going to be a jump peak, and the second way is going to be a right peak like this. The way that I decide which one I want to use is just depending on where the target is. If the target's further out, then I can do the jump peak. If the target's further in, then I can do the right peak and then reset. So the weakness to this edit is it's hard to hit people that are right up against the wall, people that may be doing this jump peak that I just showed. So the counter to that is to do this almost the same edit, except you don't have to edit this all the way. You can just edit the one square just because it's faster. And I like to crouch right away, and then I like to press crouch again and then jump. And if you didn't know, double tapping space is actually slower to uncrouch and then jump. For whatever reason, if you just press crouch and then space, you almost like skip the whole crouch animation. You can just like jump straight away. So the whole sequence is going to look like this. So yeah, pretty useful if you've ever just had anybody camping this area and just like taking jump shots. Just open this up, and then you can shoot and just reset. The reset sometimes is hard on this because you can't move your crosshair any further in to get the reset sometimes. So when you shoot, you almost have to turn and reset. Alright, next one is your long range peaks. So here you're just going to want to build like your normal ramp platform, and all you're doing here is practicing the very simple crouch peak. This time I wanted to have some targets that were just farther away and harder to hit, and for crouch peeking or just like taking AR shots when I don't want to expose myself for very long, is to just uncrouch, walk up a little bit, 2 shots, and then I move positions and just repeat that. Obviously you want to do a little bit faster. And yeah, there's lots of targets in here, all the way down here, and taking this awkward shot and just like learning how to crouch peek that, and same with this one down here. And yeah, you can drop down and build anywhere you want on this and take different angles, different levels. Okay, next is even ground peaks. And what I like to do in this room is just a standard peanut butter edit like this, and then I switch over to this edit. And the way you use this edit is you don't stand in the middle, because that's just going to expose you for a very long time, even if you reset it quickly. The way you use this edit is you kind of use it as like a right peek at the same time. So you jump up and shoot, and then you move out of the way. It's very hard to get shot when you're doing this, especially when you reset it after you do it like this. And then you still have all your standard right peeks that you can do. Okay, so now we're gonna go to the more complicated ramp peaks. So when you come into this room, you wanna get 2 walls down and a ramp. The original drill that you'd do on this one is with the right peaks with the ramp. Like this. But I have a bunch of new peaks that you can do with ramps that are really useful for reaching weird angles. Edit your ramp like this, and your wall half like this. And you want to stand close to the ramp and far back, so that you can just barely see the target that you want to hit. And yeah, this is a jump peak. You just jump up and you shoot. And then you want to reset the wall as you do this. And you want to jump backwards as you do this. And then eventually when you get used to it, the drill just looks like this. Okay, so next peak, you start with your ramp like this, and you edit it sideways like this. You select your wall from back here, and then you reach around behind the ramp and you edit the wall like this. This one can be weird at first because you can't really see the tiles that you're editing. You just gotta remember the motion, and you gotta make sure that you're selecting from back here and then moving over and not selecting the ramp. And this one can be pretty useful for holding a position because you can hold this ramp and look through it and be totally covered. When you're ready to shoot, you can just pull out your shotgun and shoot, and you can see them, you know where they are, you can have a good crosshair placement when you do this. And the way that I practice this is just like this. The next one is similar to this peak, except we're just going to be doing it on the other side. And doing it this way is actually a bit of a disadvantage because you're using the left hand, even though it is still a pretty good jump peak. But when you do it on this side, you can have a lot more cover just because the gun's on the right side, you have that right side advantage. And then after you do this peak, you can switch the ramp over to this side and then do this peak. And then when you get over to this wall, we can do the exact same edit that we did before. So think of this peak as just more of like an extended peanut butter edit. You do not want to do it on this side because there's no advantage for you there, like you have to expose way too much of yourself. You're only going to do this edit on the right side. Because of the angle, like this peak is not a huge disadvantage on the left side, but this one is. So yeah, you do this edit, and then after that, you're going to come here and do this edit again. And this is pretty much the same edit that we did over here, except it's just the opposite side. And eventually when you get good at all those, you can just do a drill where you just chain them all together, and that kind of looks like this. So yeah, challenge to Raider464. I want to see how fast you can do that drill. Okay, so the last one is the spray and bloom punish. So the first one is you have a target over here, and he's going to start shooting at you as soon as you step on that red square. So what you want to do is you want to come here, you place a wall, and you get first shot accuracy. As soon as you break the wall, you take a shot, and then you close your wall. And then you can come over here and do the exact same thing with a shotgun. Yeah, and that's like a bloom spray punish. So basically all you're doing here, in the case of the shotgun, you're trading his low DPS AR shot for your high DPS shotgun shot. The AR has a high damage per minute, but a very low damage per second. The shotgun's damage per second is much higher. So in that split second where the wall is open, you can basically out-trade just because the shotgun does more damage per second. In the case of the AR, you're actually just taking advantage of a more accurate shot, whereas if someone has to spray your wall, then their bloom's going to get very big by the time the wall breaks. So yeah, that's all the peaks and everything for this map. This map is super useful, and this is like the second part to getting into the game. You have to get your mechanics down first, then you get your fundamental knowledge and your fundamental peaks, so that you don't even have to think about them. You're just using all of these advantages subconsciously. And also what that does is it allows more room in the working memory to focus on other things like awareness and other more complicated decision making that you might have to make. So yeah, that's all for this video. Thanks guys.